Hello and welcome back to Food as Fuel, our series on the subject of food and the science of nutrition. I'm Nicola Moore, a registered nutritional therapist and head of clinics at the Institute for over 10 years. Today, we're going to look at the role food can have in actually how we feel. For example, if you feel there's a food that doesn't agree with you, or if you feel that you have a sensitivity, an allergy, or an intolerance to something, what's actually going on in this situation? And what do you need to know about helping yourself to be able to respond to foods appropriately and to not feel ill when you eat? So, do you think there's a food that you're eating that you're reacting to, and why is that reaction happening? Well, there are a number of different ways that you can react to foods, and that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to look at IgE allergy responses, which is an explicit allergy, something you'd know you have, and something you'd have quite pronounced symptoms from, for example, hives or even swelling and even ultimately anaphylaxis. That's IgE. But we're also going to look further along at different sorts of reactions that you can have in the immune system. There's another cell that we're going to look at that's created by the immune system called IgG. And there are some links there with how we react to foods as well. But further than that, there are things like food intolerances. People also often talk about food intolerances as being a reaction to a food, but correctly speaking, an intolerance is actually just referring to lower levels of a particular digestive enzyme, meaning that it's harder for you to actually digest that food and can create symptoms as a result. A really good example of this would be something like lactose intolerance. And if you had lactose intolerance, a really clear, identifiable symptom of that might be that whenever you consume dairy, you experience diarrhea quite quickly afterwards. In an allergy, there's a very specific immune cell or antibody that's produced quickly and in large numbers in response to whatever it is that you've consumed. And this antibody has been given the name by immunologists of IgE. So an IgE antibody is something that you would make very, very quickly and that would have very big reactions in the body. Thus, you would see quite quickly that you're having hives or that things are beginning to swell. So IgE is an immune cell that you produce due to a haphazard event that's happened in your immune system that's created this memory to a food with a confusion with the immune system. But the problem with IgE is that they have very, very long memories. So if you do have an allergy, it's very likely that that allergy will be something that's lifelong for you. Now, if you feel that you're reacting to a food, but you've had allergy tests done and you've been told you don't have an allergy, but you eat something and you just don't feel well afterwards, there could be a number of reasons to why this is. Now, you could have something that we would classify more as being something more called a sensitivity. So sensitivity is when you are actually creating immune cells in response to the food that you're eating, but they're not IgE immune cells. They're different immune cells called IgG. Now, the controversy and the problem here is that we all create IgG cells, and actually IgG cells are a really, really important part of the immune system. So it doesn't follow that you would have high IgG food reactions to a food and necessarily automatically have some kind of inflammatory-led symptom. But we do understand that for some people there is something going on with the food they consume and a link somewhere along the line with IgG. But what's happening? So there's not just one IgG immune antibody that we produce. There's around 4 different types. And some of these IgG antibodies work very, very closely with IgE allergy antibodies to actually be able to educate and protect against having a reaction of an IgE nature from a food. So this is why we have to be really, really careful when dealing with looking at IgG reactions. But what immunologists are now understanding is that actually sometimes when we consume particular foods, we create an IgG response, but then something further happens along the chain in the immune system. And a further inflammatory response happens. And that's with the activation of a protein called complement. And what the immunologists are now looking at is whether actually, where for some of us, we're consuming a food and we are actually having some kind of a sensitivity or an mediated reaction to that food, but it's something more to do with the further down the chain inflammatory responses rather than just the IgG antibody in the first place. So from looking at the previous episodes that we've done, you may already have an idea that here at the Institute, we're very interested in the role of the gut and digestive health and how we feel. And this also ties into food intolerances and food sensitivities as well. And this is because the bacteria that reside in our gut, when they are exposed to the diet that we consume, they can, as a consequence, release gases. And these gases are actually very, very similar in their presentation with regards to how they make us feel to a food sensitivity. So, for example, if you eat a food and you become bloated or you feel tired or get brain fog, things like that from eating, then it may be that it's to do with your gut and the microbes in your gut rather than you actually having some further kind of inflammatory response that's more related to the immune system. But it's also true that you can have a little bit of everything going on, especially if you've had lots of digestive problems for years and been feeling quite unwell for a number of years as well. Another consequence of having bacterial imbalances, especially in our small intestine, is that it seems to be able to influence the degree at which we're able to manufacture digestive enzymes and the ability for our digestive enzymes to be able to break our food down. So this is another area that's worth exploring if you have problems with food and if you feel that food that you're eating just isn't agreeing with you. So what can you do to support yourself if you feel that you have a food reaction? Well, number one, if you feel that you're eating foods and they just don't make you feel well, what you could do is keep a food diary for a period of time just to keep an eye on what you're eating and how you're feeling. With a food sensitivity, it's not necessarily going to be a very quick reaction as an explicit allergy would give you. So you're not going to necessarily break out in hives or feel that you have swelling happening. Those are really important symptoms that you need to speak to your doctor about immediately. But if you get things like abdominal pain or bloating, changes in your bowel movements after eating specific foods, or you just feel groggy, low in energy, or have things like head fog, then those could be symptoms of a food reaction that's not as explicit, I suppose, as a stark allergy would be. Now, there are some foods that are quite commonly associated with not helping us to feel well, especially digestively. Clinically, I have found over the years that wheat is quite a difficult protein, or the protein gluten within wheat can be quite difficult for certain people to digest, and that they can feel much, much better when they crowd that sort of food out of their diet, adding other things in instead. So that might be something for you to consider, because the other benefit of keeping a food diary for a short period of time is that you get to have a look and see if you're actually exposing yourself to a wide variety of foods or not. Really, we understand for the gut to be healthy, we need to eat lots and lots of different foods on a weekly basis. So if you look at your food diary and you notice that you're having similar ingredients going in all of your meals, for example, things made with flour, then that could be one of the reasons why you're maybe not feeling so good from the food that you're eating. And it might just be simply due to the fact that as a consequence of not having such a varied diet, that your microbiome is being impacted. And so your gut bacteria are not working for you in an optimal way to help you feel as healthy as you can. So the second thing you can do, similarly to what we've spoken about with the fibre, is to look at having a really wide range of foods in your diet. So start challenging yourself to either try new foods or to mix up the grains that you're eating, or to try different vegetables, add more nuts into your diet and so on. It's not just the plant-based foods that are going to be helpful for us. There are other ingredients in other foods that are important too. So meat fibres, fish, eggs, all of those things. If you want to eat those sorts of things and they feel good for you, then enjoy those foods as well. Really, it's all about having lots of different types of foods in small amounts that helps your gut to be nice and diverse. And that seems to be incredibly beneficial for over time reducing the effects of having food sensitivities. So if what I've spoken about today makes sense to you and you would like to explore this further, then do consider getting in touch with us. We have a range of nutritional therapists here in the clinics who can support you with understanding the right way for you to eat, for you to be able to not have too many symptoms from food, but ultimately to be able to eat a balanced, healthy and varied diet, which is the most important thing. Get in touch and see if you'd like to work with one of our nutritional therapy students or one of our graduated practitioners. So I hope you found that helpful. Today's subject is actually massive, so to cover it in such a short space of time is a real challenge. You probably have more questions than answers from this, so do get in touch with us if you do, using the hashtag #IonFoodAsFuel, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.